because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, and when, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened. There's institutional racism. What does that mean? Show me a law that is racist in intent, and we will agree. Show me a police officer who commits a racist act, like we saw in South Carolina, right, where a police officer shot a black man running away, and it was obviously unjustified, and I will agree. But you need, the idea that you can craft a narrative based on no racism because it just must be somewhere out there in the ether, that doesn't solve problems for anybody and creates more problems for people, because now they grow up in a milieu and an environment where they are told that every obstacle they face is from some shadowy, nameless, faceless group who is out to get them simply because of the color of their skin. They'll never succeed in that environment.
Fear racism is a very serious problem in the United States. Take a look at the scholarly work on it, say George Fredrickson's study of white supremacy, comparative study. He concludes, I think plausibly, that the white supremacy in the United States was even more extreme and savage than in South Africa. Just think of our own history. You know, our economy, our wealth, our privilege relies very heavily on a century of horrifying slave labor camps. The cotton production was not just the fuel of the Industrial Revolution. It was the basis for the financial system, the merchant system, commerce, England as well. These were bitter, brutal slave labor camps. There's a recent study by Edward Baptiste which comes out with some startling information. It's called, actually the title is startling, something like The Half Was Never Told, which is more or less true, was never told. But for example, he shows pretty convincingly that in the slave labor camps, the plantations, we call them politely, the productivity increased more rapidly than in industry with no technological advance, just the bullwhip. Just by driving people harder and harder to the point of survival, they were able to increase productivity and profit. And it's not just he also points out that the word torture is not used in discussion of this period. He introduces it should be used. I mean, these are camps that could have impressed the Nazis, and it is a large part of the basis for our wealth and privilege. Is there a slave museum in the United States? Actually, the first one is just being established now by some private donor. I mean, this is the core of our history, along with the extermination or expulsion of the native population. But it's not part of our consciousness.